Well, hello there. It's been a while. We missed you.
Don't say that. That's weird. It's a weird thing to say.
We love you.
Welcome to Costco. I love you.
Just a heads up, for our special Valentine's Day episode, which you are currently listening to, I would like to provide a warning that it is going to be super duper explicit, not appropriate for kids. So if you are a kid or are in a close proximity to kids, maybe give this one a pass. Listen to it in private in your home, shamefully.
It's about to get dirty. Sexy.
Wow, wow.
This month is a very special month of the year.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm. February's poppin'. It's Black History Month. It's several people that we know's birthday month. Speaking of which, your brother's birthday is in 2 days. Probably should do something about that.
Nah.
But most importantly, it is the month of Valentine's.
Who is this Valentine?
It's a really good question. One time, my brother wanted to get off of school for Valentine's Day, and my mom said no. And she said, well, you can have off of Valentine's Day if you write an essay on Saint Valentine. I don't know if he got the day off.
Well, in case you didn't know, this is Thingamajigs, the exciting history of mundane things. I am a co-host, Ben.
Does that make me the secondary co-host number 2?
Yes, you are the co-host.
I am co-host Danielle.
And the host is history. Yeah.
No, we will not be covering the history of Saint Valentine. We are going to talk about sex toys, which make great Valentine's Day presents.
Barbies aren't very good sex toys. They don't have genitals. Is that what a sex toy is?
No, I mean, anything's a sex toy if you're brave enough.
Abraham Lincoln said that.
Sure. You know how often he diddled with Barbies? You know why his hat was so tall?
Big dildo under there.
Yes. I was going to say Barbie, but I guess they are the same.
Yeah, Barbies and dildos are the same.
Did you know that there are women out there who don't own a vibrator? I'm not going to put anyone on blast, but I know far too many women that don't have one and don't want the so-called embarrassment of going to the store or even ordering one online.
Yeah, that guy in the Amazon warehouse is going to be really looking down on you as he sorts your anonymous package.
I know, as if anyone cares, but also as if they would be able to see through the box and shake it and just know, that one rattles like a pleasure plaything's in there.
As long as they don't ship it with the battery installed.
You could just say it was an electric toothbrush.
I've heard lots of stories about airport security.
Really?
And bags buzzing and having to be inspected. That I could see as embarrassing.
So to help with the stigma, I have some statistics to ease everyone's minds that they are not the only one interested in getting some help or just some extra fun. Nearly half of the 1,047 heterosexual men ages 18 to 60 answered yes to using a vibrator at some point in their lives. And over half of the 3,800 heterosexual women ages 18 to 60 reported the same. So obviously there's more women, but that's not surprising.
I would have thought there'd been more.
The numbers are even higher in the queer community, with 70.6% of lesbians and 79.7% of bisexual women. I thought that was interesting that bisexual women use them more than lesbians.
It's pretty weird.
78.5% of gay or bisexual men. So it's not just the queer ladies who are getting in on that. The sex product market is just booming, and part of that is thanks to the pandemic. In France, purchases rose by 94%, and in Italy, 124%, in Spain, 300% in March 2020 alone. So just that month, that's how much it rose.
3 times.
I'm pretty sure you gave me a vibrator for Christmas right before the pandemic really kicked off in March, so I might be a part of those statistics, which somehow makes me feel very happy to be a part of something big like that.
Big and purple.
I wouldn't call it big, but it is very purple.
They have to be purple.
Is purple the sexiest color?
Yes.
I thought that was red.
No.
Oh. Well, all right then. It's so weird to me that there's some women that don't have vibrators. I feel like it's a normal thing for girlfriends to go to sex shops together and buy whatever they're feeling at the time. Or I guess I could just be friends with very free women. Anytime I have purchased anything at a sex shop, I have always been with friends. Usually one particular friend who, again, I'm not going to put on blast, but she probably knows who she is. So it was actually kind of difficult to find reputable sites for this episode. So far, the topics we've covered have also been covered by sites like Encyclopedia Britannica, National Geographic. Various universities will write articles and post them for the public. Usually I've got like 20 tabs open and I'm reading down the timeline, comparing, making sure that all the information I'm using is cross-referenced. And all the smart people out there agree. But this time I had one university, SAMRU, National Center for Biotechnology Information and Social Science Research Council, and Wikipedia, and some other sites that I won't name.
Too hot for TV.
There were several like sex toy sites, which actually sold sex toys. So they were like, here's a history of sex toys, and also we sell sex toys. You should buy one.
It's good. Good search engine optimization.
So I guess I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was a little surprised to find out that the first sex toy was a dildo.
It's probably a stick.
I mean, it was more than just a stick. What I really should have been surprised at was where it was found.
I don't really want to know.
No, it's a place, like a geographical site. Do you want to guess where it was found?
Tip of the pyramids.
That would be hilarious. No, it was found in southern Germany in 2005. I know, right? That would have been my last guess for some reason. I feel like the Germans would be too busy with conquering to conquer, if you know what I mean.
Germans don't do that stuff. That's inappropriate.
Unless they are breeding children for the motherland. Fatherland? It was 8 inches long, so fairly standard, but a little bit on the larger side. Oh, and for anyone using the metric, that is 20 centimeters. I believe the US average is 6 inches, but I feel like dildos are meant to be a little larger than average. I mean, we are fulfilling fantasies, right? So it was actually in 14 siltstone pieces, and archaeologists had to put it back together. Now, I should clarify that we don't know that it was used as a dildo, because it was 28,000 years ago, and it is assumed to be the oldest sex toy found as of yet. Did we find a dildo? Yes. Was it used as a dildo? We don't really know. It could have just been used for ceremonial things, or who knows, it could have just been decorative. Lord knows we've been putting penises on everything since the beginning of time. And it was shaped like a penis, if that helps.
So they had some detail in it.
Yes. What's also strange to me about this ancient dildo is how slim it is. It's only 3 centimeters wide.
They didn't know yet. They still thought it was the length.
Professor Nicholas Conrad supposedly told the BBC that female representation with highly accentuated sexual attributes are very well documented at many sites, but male representations are very, very rare. And historians seem to think that it's safe to assume that these dildos did see some action. Professor Conrad also playfully said that it was highly polished, which I can't disagree with that assumption. People love shoving things in places.
Do they?
Go to the ER. I promise you they will have some fun radiographs of things you would not believe people have tried. Anything is a dildo if you're brave enough.
Abraham Lincoln.
But it wasn't just stone that people used to form sex toys. They also used the classic wood, bone, or antler, depending on the year the artifact is from. They used bronze. Some of the more strange mediums was camel dung. I believe they coated it in resin. And another fun one is bread. I have to assume it was really hard bread. Maybe that's what they did with the burnt loaves.
Get some day-old breadsticks from the Olive Garden. You've got a bundle of dildos.
I guess maybe they had dildo hard bread recipes. Maybe they baked it specifically for that purpose. This is all my own speculation. Such a strange thought. Also, wow, the invention of silicone cannot get here fast enough.
Why camel dung? Even if you're coating it in something, at that point you could use anything. You could use dirt. I would feel better about that.
Why would we do anything, Ben? I don't have an answer.
There are so many things in this world.
Why did we put poop on anything, okay? We were convinced that poop was meant for something. Back then, it could have been a magical substance, and we just knew that we had to figure out what it was for. Ancient China was a pretty hopping place for sex toys. There was a bronze phallus found in a tomb from 206 BC era.
Bronze is great. Why didn't we all use bronze?
Well, because not everybody could afford that.
I like the bronze idea.
I bet everybody liked that idea, but sometimes all you can afford is a camel dung dildo, and you are happy for it.
There's dirt on the ground, it's free. I don't know, man.
Some research indicates that they might have inserted them into dead bodies.
Why?
Jade was thought to ward off evil spirits, so they would, for lack of a more reverent word, plug orifices so that the person's chi could be preserved.
Yeah, if you go on Goop, you can still get some jade to put in your orifices. Thanks, Gwyneth Paltrow.
We can also thank the Chinese for the cock ring.
Is that so?
I don't have a penis, so I'm not sure, but it does not look comfortable.
I mean, if they're like stretchy, I don't imagine it's uncomfortable. But I don't really see what you get out of it.
Its main function was to hold the blood in the penis for longer. They came about in the 1100s, and it was a time when the powers in China were unpredictable, and emperors not only had wives, but they also had mistresses and concubines, and all of them needed to be serviced, and that was a lot for one man. Not to mention you were desperate for one of the women to get pregnant to hold the power, and that was probably a lot of pressure, unlike what he had in his penis.
It's a good era. Where's my concubines?
You know what material they settled on to make their cock rings out of?
Hair.
Very close. Goat eyelid.
Ew. What?
And the picture I saw still had eyelashes.
Ew.
Yep, goat eyelids were stretchier, I guess, than other options at the time. Now, it is very possible that simultaneous invention was happening, but I'm going to give the cock ring to China. I know we're talking about sex toys, but the amount of ancient erotic art I came across was just mesmerizing. Some of that stuff you could stare at for a long while and not exactly know what's going on. I mean, you know what's going on, but it's the train wreck effect. You just tilt your head and you can't look away. What a specific kink. I wonder if there are people who still masturbate to that material.
What was happening in it?
Oral sex has been a top fave for a long time, I will say that. Also, there were paintings from 3000 BC showing women wearing large strap-ons.
Get it, ladies.
And I just wonder if there's anybody out there who enters his masturbatorium or her masturbatorium and pulls up internet research pictures of ancient erotic art and says that is my fetish. That is my thing. That is what grinds my gears.
You know what's fun about kinks?
My hole.
Fun thing about kinks.
Frames my...
The fun thing is, there is always at least one person, but definitely more, who are into whatever you could think of.
But I doubt they're listening to our podcast. If you are, reach out. We won't say anything. I would just like to know if there's someone out there who's into this. And if there's not, maybe I should, so that Rule 34 can continue to apply. The ancient Greeks were the ones who have recorded sexual practices involving bread, or specifically allisbokalix, which I hope I'm saying right. It just means using a loaf of bread as a dildo. Those people would have lost their minds at the Olive Garden.
Perfect shape and size. It's like they knew.
Which is funny because when I think of Greek food, I always think of olive oil, but I guess it wasn't just a great salad dressing. They also used phalluses made of stuffed polished leather and drenched that in olive oil, and you've got yourself a good time. I think we also talked about olive oil being used as a contraceptive as well, which is not advised. I did find something saying that it was particularly used on body parts that did not self-lubricate. I think we can all use our imaginations for what that means.
Belly button?
You have to have a really deep belly button for that to work out.
Nah.
So we get the word dildo from around 1400, and it's a mix of the Latin word dilatare, which means open wide, and the Italian word diletto, which means delight. This is yet another item that the material from which it was made was determined by how much money you had. There were, of course, gold, silver, and ivory options for people who could afford it, but I feel like this one is one of those things you really don't need those expensive materials. I can't imagine that those feel any better than the ones made of bone or stone, or even better yet, unripened bananas, which I think would have been the best option. I would have been an unripened banana user. Not only can you have a good time, but in a few days you also get a snack. I love things that have multi-use.
At least you don't get any splinters from a banana. But you can't ignore the antimicrobial properties of gold and silver.
Yes, well, not everybody was so privileged. And of course, we can't talk about sex toys without talking about the Kama Sutra. And while there are endless things to say about the Kama Sutra, I am specifically going to talk about toys that are engineered to receive. It has one of the oldest mentions of using a sex doll. It also talks about how hollowed out gourds and bamboo moistened with oil were good options.
I'm going to stay out of the bamboo, but I'd try a gourd.
You're literally going to stay out of it. While we're on the subject of sex dolls, let's dive deeper into that for a second. Badoosh.
Badoosh. That's the joke sound. Danielle has made a joke, in case that wasn't clear.
In the 17th century, women were considered bad luck on ships, so, they had to come up with something else because women weren't allowed. And someone had the grand idea of bringing these dolls that were usually covered in cloth and stuffed with straw or more bits of cloth. Probably anything that would give the doll fullness would have been used, and strategic holes were cut. But I'm not sure how that really worked because I can't imagine these dolls were very snug. How did they make that happen? How did they make it happen? What I'm most concerned about is what was the doll to semen ratio? I mean that in every way you just thought of. How many dolls per seaman was there? Did they have their own dolls? Was it like the captain had his own doll, but the shipmates shared one or a few? Did you bring your own doll and guard it with your life? And then the other way of how often did they clean these things? I have to assume rarely. There's no way they washed them with every use. And if they were sharing, can you imagine the STIs? Hopefully they shared the dolls by the STI you have. Line up behind the doll with the disease you have. If they just named the doll gonorrhea or chlamydia or syphilis, which I have to assume they would nickname the syphilis doll Phyllis, because that's a great idea. I just want to know how this worked.
I think you got a little too deep into those dolls. Might need to get checked. I'm more worried about sticking my lovemaker into a doll filled with hay. Sounds very rashy.
You know that hay poked through the cloth. You just know it did. Maybe that was part of the appeal.
A little fire and ice, but mostly fire.
So dolls were given the nickname Dutch wives. A lot of sailors were doing this, though, so I don't know why the Dutch were getting picked on. The Japanese also had sex dolls, but wow, did they take it to a new level.
They always do. God bless them.
Now, obviously, they had poor people dolls, but they also had dolls that were in the shape of a young girl and had velvet vulvas.
Hell yeah. You got a velvet vulva, baby.
What a compliment.
Your vulva is velvet and your vagina is satin.
And my tongue is silk.
Too far. You're disgusting.
What's funny is, during this time in the 17th century, Englishmen were becoming increasingly uncomfortable with women owning dildos because they were worried that their own fleshy dildo wouldn't be needed anymore. So some laws were passed preventing women from buying them for themselves. Whereas in Japan, the feeling was quite the opposite. They didn't feel threatened, but thought of it more as a fun thing writing stories where women pleasured themselves, and they thought it was great. They were very pro-dildo. The Middle Ages gets bunk. So as you know, the people of the Middle Ages were very religious, and without getting into Catholic jargon, there was this book that the priests used to guide people into repentance. People would go into this little confession booth, confess their sins, and then the priest would tell them what they had to do to get back in God's good grace. Anyway, so using a dildo was one of those things that the church didn't like. They were very against sodomy, which, when you think of sodomy, you only really think about anal sex. But that's probably because the church is against sodomy, and the people of the church today are generally against gay people, so they kind of cherry-picked that one to serve a purpose. Now we have whole centuries of people who have forgotten that sodomy is any kind of sex that cannot produce a baby. So guess what? Oral and dildos, or I should say any kind of masturbation, are on that list. I'm not sure if protected vaginal sex is considered sodomy, but I know the Catholic Church is against that until you get permission after the church has decided that you have performed your be fruitful and multiply duty.
So you have to go ask your priest if you can bang with a condom?
I guess so. Anyway, so I'm getting to a point. This book had prompts to help the priests suss out various sins, and two of the ones that I found were as follows. Have you done what certain women are accustomed to do? This is to make some sort of device or implement in the shape of a male member of the size to match your desire, and you have fastened it to the area of your genitals or those of another with some form of fastening, and you have fornicated with other women, or others have done with a similar instrument or another sort with you. If you have done this, you shall do penance for 5 years on legitimate holy days. And that's the normal one.
I like that one. That's hot.
They all start the same way. Have you done what some women are wont to do? They take a live fish and put it in their vagina, keeping it there for a while until it is dead. Then they cook or roast it and give it to their husbands to eat, doing this in order to make the men be more ardent in their love for them. If you have, you should do 2 years of penance on the appointed fast days.
So 5 years of penance for using a strap-on. 2 years of penance for putting a live fish in your vagina until it dies, and then you cook it and feed it to your man.
The key word there was man.
Yeah, has to be your man. Otherwise, you're going straight to hell. All right, glad we got that sorted. Good to know. We're in for a lot of penance.
I don't think I've done either of those. I don't think I've put a strap-on or, I know I haven't put a live fish up there.
Hey, you can be honest here. This is a safe place. I love your fish. It's delicious.
Also, that one was a sin because it was considered witchcraft. If vagina magic is obviously strictly forbidden.
Okay, so if you put the fish in your vagina until it dies and then cook it and feed it to your man because of recreational reasons, then no penance. You're fine.
It's not specified, but probably. I don't think anyone would do that without hoping for some kind of magical result of being loved more passionately. I don't think it was you know what would be a fun idea? You know what would really, babe, we've been married for 10 years, and things have just gotten stale. The bread's stale, the love is stale, but you know what's not stale? This fish. This fish is fresh as heck, and it's gonna go straight to heaven, my special place, and then I'm going to put it in your special place, your mouth. What do you think of that idea?
I like it.
Cool, let's go to the fish market today. There was also this trend in medieval England where men would wear these very long, pointy shoes. Like really long and pointy shoes, and they stuffed them so they would be stiff and hard.
And then they stuffed them.
And for some reason, this was so sexy. Men would wiggle the end of their toes at passersby, and that was scandalous. From what I can gather, men would sit across from a lovely maiden at the dinner table and flick their skirts and proceed higher and higher as far as she would let him. And apparently orgasms happened sometimes at the dinner table.
These were specifically dildo shoes to masturbate women in public.
I have to assume they also just really liked the way they looked, like they were fashionable. I have to assume that the shoe came first, and then they thought...
And then the girls came second.
No, that the shoe was invented because they thought that it was pretty or fashionable, and then they had the idea, what would be a good idea with these stiff, pointy shoes. I can't imagine that they invented this shoe for the purpose of twiddling female lady bits at the dinner table. I can't imagine that they were like trying to reach across the table and like, man, I just can't reach.
If my shoes were just much longer.
Women were said to have masturbated with these shoes. Like without a foot in them. Just, wow. Sitting across the table, sitting across the floor over there, and, you sneak off with your lover's, your want-to-be lover's shoe.
I dig it.
Giuseppe asks, hey, where'd my shoe go?
Why do your shoes smell like my wife?
Monks claimed that men who wore these shoes wore their hair long and lush like a woman and wore their tunics too tight and were condemned as sodomitic filth. There were some laws passed, but they didn't ban them altogether. The length of the toe was governed depending on your status. Commoners had to wear shorter poulins, whereas barons and knights could have longer toes because they were thought to not partake in such filth that the shoes supposedly encouraged. The Middle Ages were weird. Let's get to more modern times. Let's jump to the 1800s. This is a confusing time because the vibrator is finally a thing, and that's great. It feels like the vibrator is one of those symbols of female freedom, but there was a lot of lore to wade through. I had always thought that in the early 1800s, doctors first used vibrators to masturbate women as a treatment for hysteria, which was a bogus diagnosis tacked on women for literally any reason. Are you faint? Are you disruptive? Do you have women's issues? Bang, hysteria. I imagine there were some actual issues that got overlooked because they didn't really care about women's health, and also a lot of labeling assertive women with hysteria. So I'm sure there's a lot of poor women that actually had something wrong with them that fell through the cracks. So that part is true. It's very sad. That was something that happened. And it's also true that doctors owned vibrators and tried to use them in medical treatments, but supposedly it is not true that they used them on women to cure hysteria. Now, is it possible that it happened and that's where these claims come from? Of course, there are a lot of skeezy doctors out there. John Mulaney has a great bit about one that he was using to get drugs that he didn't need. I really don't know what to think on this subject. I found lots of things claiming it was a myth and lots of things speaking it as fact. This idea came from the book The Technology of Orgasm, written by Dr. Rachel Maines, and all of the articles that make these claims cite her book. But she also claims she never said that it was fact, just that it was an interesting theory. Which I kind of get. I've spoken some interesting theories on this podcast that are just fun thought experiments and not facts. And her saying that makes me think it was not true. But I guess maybe it was. But yeah, people absolutely grabbed hold of this idea and spread it like fact. There's even a movie based on this idea called Hysteria. It's on Hulu if you want to watch it.
It was a fun watch.
It was a fun watch. Oh, and while we're on the subject of vibrator lore, there was this other very interesting story about Cleopatra owning a hollowed out gourd and placing bees in it, and her using that as a vibrator. It's pretty ridiculous. I feel pretty confident saying that one is not true.
Gourd, maybe. Bees, probably not.
There's a lot of weird stuff that surrounds her. So now that we have that out of the way, let me tell you about the history of the vibrator. It's still pretty interesting. So the first steam-powered vibrator was invented in 1869 by Dr. George Taylor, and he called it a manipulator. It was pretty big. Basically, it was an engine with a dildo attached. Like an engine with a little dildo attached to it. Dr. Joseph Granville invented the electric vibrator, and it was designed to alleviate muscle pain. What is interesting is that he specifically argued that it should not be used on hysterical women. He said he had never used it on a woman and that he didn't want to help mislead people. He wrote about it in his 1883 book. To me, I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist, but to me, that sounds like someone who did do that and didn't want people to know.
Maybe he was just a progressive guy who didn't believe in hysteria.
Maybe. It's possible he was just a progressive, educated man who believed that women were more complicated than just every issue we have revolving around our uteruses wandering and needing to go back where they came from. Or he totally masturbated women and he felt bad about it.
How could you feel bad about something like that?
They certainly didn't feel bad about it. There were also hand crank models. They looked a lot like those hand crank beaters for cooking. By the 20th century, there were lots of electric models available, but they were advertised as beauty products, as like facial massagers to get rid of wrinkles. It claimed to relieve nervous headaches. This is a quote from one of the adverts. Give your system the proper stimulation by using electrotonic, the wonderful home treatment method that has the scientific world with its intense relief. And then gave a long list of all the things it supposedly cured, like headaches, rheumatism, backache, scalp disease, falling hair, sore feet, nervousness, sleeplessness. Another one called it AIDS that every woman appreciates.
And it was all completely true.
Now, of course, they did this to get around laws like Texas had the obscene devices law where it prohibited owning stuff like this. I believe they still criminalized owning 6 or more, which is very weird. Why? Why 6? Why is 6 too many? Why is 5 the perfect amount?
Because a masturbation party with 5 people is okay.
Or your orgies have to stay 5 people or less in Texas.
Yep.
Let's talk a bit about the butt plug.
Gladly.
Also a creation of the 1800s. The first documented butt plug I was able to find was Dr. Young's rectal dilators. As you can imagine, they were not for sexual use. They were to cure lots of things, but mostly constipation, which is funny. The reason behind constipation was that when you use the butt plug, the muscle involved in defecating would become stronger, was the idea.
That muscle that pushes all the poop out.
Right.
Yeah.
But like, you're not supposed to bear down and push whenever you are pooping. It's supposed to just naturally come out.
No, it's because you need to exercise the muscle that pushes all your poop out.
Maybe don't exercise too much. You're going to get a prolapse.
No, that's just the muscle that pushes all the poop out coming out.
So just so we're clear, no bearing down. No pushing.
No, you gotta work that muscle.
Oh my God.
This is not medical advice.
The other things are quite fun, so I'm of course going to give a list. Madness, foul breath. This is for butt plugs, remember. Sallow skin, anemia, anorexia, headaches, diarrhea, prolapse, which is hilarious. If it falls out, just stick it all back in and plug it. It's fine. Flatulence. Again, nothing can come out if you're plugged up. Hemorrhoids, acne, insomnia, indigestion, nervousness, cold extremities. What was the thought behind cold extremities?
Because the feeling of something up your butt would raise your blood pressure and help you stay warm.
I hate when our topic overlaps with medicine because I feel like that is such a dangerous subject, but man, it happens so often. We have been trying to cure stuff by shoving things up the bum forever. It's a real shame that more of it didn't work.
No, it all completely works.
There are very few things that can be better by putting something in your butt. Sex is one of them, but I don't think that's what they were going for. Constipation is something that can be solved by putting something up your butt. Not a butt plug. There are suppositories for that. Maybe if you wanted to cure your sobriety, you could put a vodka tampon up there.
That would do it.
I've been told people do that. I can't imagine that's a good idea. You have a mouth hole. I think we should all use our mouth holes more often.
A good idea? No. But fun isn't made of good ideas.
I'm going to stitch that on a pillow. The FDA ruled that Dr. Young's rectal dilators would be dangerous to health when used with the frequency and duration prescribed, and that the claims were not backed up by evidence, and the products were ordered to be destroyed, which was probably devastating for the people who were just trying to have a good time, weren't strengthening their pooping muscles. Don't worry, though. We'll get them back. The butt plug is not lost forever.
Should hope not. You'd have to go to the emergency room.
So, upon my journeys of looking into these items, there were some claims, and I know someone who has done this. People put butt plugs in to go out to the store or shopping, and it's like a fun, dirty secret that they have. But the person that I know that did it said that it helped with their ADHD and focusing during their shopping.
Can add that to Dr. Young's list of cures. ADHD.
There is no way that I would be able to focus on anything other than the thing in my butt if I was doing that and trying to find a good tomato.
You'd probably be out of the store quicker.
Where is the fun in that? I want to know, how many times have I walked by somebody at the grocery store and they had a butt plug in? There's nothing wrong with it. I think it's fine if you want to do that. But I demand to know.
Wear a hat that says, "Please be patient, I have a butt plug."
Obviously, this is a joke, and you don't have to tell anybody anything. But I really do want to know, like, how often has this happened? Do a lot of people do this all the time?
Probably, yeah.
Is it mainly women, or is probably. It like pretty halvesies on all genders doing this?
I don't know, but I guarantee that you have definitely walked past somebody in Walmart who was using a butt plug.
The 70s came, and that was a time of sexual liberation. People started talking about these things. Masturbation is liberation was a fun saying from that time frame. Betty Dodson is pretty well known during this time for setting up a workshop to teach women about their sexuality. She was a big supporter of the magic wand, which was all of our mother's go-to vibrator.
Unwieldy thing. Just massive.
And we're finally calling these things what they are, sex aids. So now it's the 90s, right? And this guy, Steve Shubin, gets his wife pregnant. But it turns out she is carrying twins, and the doctor tells the couple that because the pregnancy is higher risk, he doesn't want them having sex. Steve finds this to be very upsetting, and he asks his wife if she would think he's a pervert if he develops a device to occupy his 9 months. She's a good wife, so obviously she tells him to pursue his needs, and he gets to work. He decides that the device needs to be concealable because, you know, not everybody is as open about their needs as Steve here. He knew that he would have a hard time getting people to buy something so different, so he settled on the name Fleshlight. The reasoning being that everyone has a flashlight and no one would be weirded out by something so normal. One of the reasons this product is so good is because it's actually modeled after the parts that it represents. Casts were made of real-life human parts. The porn star Airfrat is known as the original Fleshlight model. There are fleshlights that look like vaginas, but there are also flesh jacks that look like anuses. You too can own your own for about $60 to $70, and they have sold over 4 million.
You know I'm going to get that Kinsey Reeves model.
Yeah, they have lots of porn star models now that you can choose from.
If you get the Riley Reid one, you're basic.
The guy that invented it is exactly how you would imagine a man who invented a portable orifice to be. And that is all I will say. He's been married to his wife for 30-something years, and they have 7 children. So I think it's safe to say that he gets plenty of organic love.
Good for him.
He compared not getting sex for 9 months as worse than cancer.
He didn't explicitly say that. He implied it.
He specifically said, "Give me cancer. I know what to do about that. You want me to not have sex?"
Yeah, he's saying that not having sex is scarier than cancer.
He's an interesting man. That's all I'm going to say. So there's lots of fun options now. I highly recommend you go look at what is out there. You might discover your new favorite thing. There's one thing we should probably talk about. These things are sold as novelties, so they can get around certain quality control issues. Like, dildos go in your body, and yet they don't have to disclose what these products are made of. Phthalates and micro or nanoplastics being one pretty big concern. It's a family of synthetic chemical compounds that increase the flexibility of the plastic. Now, this has not been well studied in humans' sex toys, but we know several phthalates that have come up toxic in animals, with some of the issues being carcinogenic effects in the liver, testes, uterus, ovaries, thyroid, and developing fetuses. But it's important to keep in mind that we already have a standard for 3 phthalates. There are more than 3, but you can only have up to 3. And they must be 0.1% by mass in children's products that are going to go into children's mouths. And then there are 4 that are bad altogether. So it's a fun game of roulette on whether your favorite sex toy contains them and how much they contain. One of the studies I read had 4 sex toys that they vigorously tested.
Woo!
All of them shed microplastics and contained phthalates. 2 of the 4 were within limits. One of the ones that exceeded limits said on the package phthalate free, which was not true at all, for even the ones that were within limits. Again, they're sold as novelties, which means as far as the company is concerned, they are supposed to sit on the shelf and not be touched. So don't trust the box. Most of them say body safe, but again, if they really meant that, they wouldn't be sold under the novelty banner. And if I had to guess, it's simply money. These companies don't hate you or are conspiring to hurt you, but it's cheaper. Maybe put a condom over that dildo before you play with it. Just a thought. Remember those numbers I gave at the beginning of the episode? They were mostly there to help everyone relax, that they aren't alone. But because life is scary, I also have to add the higher exposure rate in the queer community poses a disproportional risk. That means that queer people and women are the highest risk category. With AI becoming more prevalent and sex dolls already being a thing, we really need to get this stuff under control before frequenting AI brothels and having a socially acceptable AI partner is the norm. We're making steps towards that with sex coming out of the taboo circle of conversation. The less you talk about something, the more dangerous it becomes because there's no accountability. The world needs to know that almost everyone is using sex toys and we deserve them to be safe. I have some fun facts.
All right.
The first sex shop was opened in 1962. Can you guess Germany?
It's crazy.
Flensburg, West Germany.
Germans, man. Who would have thought? They're the front runners in masturbation technology.
Aside from penises, animals are the most popular shape for dildos. Some of which I found were sharks, unicorns, tentacle, not like a whole octopus, but like one tentacle. I found one that the tip of it was a penis, but it morphed into a Tyrannosaurus Rex body and little legs, which I found very fascinating.
It's the macro fetish. It's where you get off thinking about putting little people in your vagina. I don't know, I think that's weird.
We don't kink shame, unless it's illegal.
I don't kink shame. I just kink ask why.
Some very realistic sex dolls come with internal heating systems to make the silicone warm, like real flesh.
Love that.
There's a Christian sex toy website called CovenantSpice.com. They pretty much have everything a heterosexual couple could want, except of course porn. But everything else apparently is on the table, including on the table.
They also have some nice tips for sexual health, which I thought was cool. You know, really easing people into it, doing the Lord's work.
I would imagine they have that market to themselves. I mean, who else is making Christian sex toys, which is kind of ridiculous because they're just sex toys sold by Christians, I guess. I'm all for it. That the Christian community needs to loosen up and get some sex toys.
Loosen up and loosen up. Their website's been around for a long time too. I think it started in 2001. I had to go on the archive to figure it out.
I might have to order myself a Christian dildo. I hope on the box it says something like Jesus approved.
Pre-blessed.
You can clone your own penis, or I guess your favorite penis, to make your own custom dildo. They come in different skin tones or fun colors, and they cost about $50. It's called Clone a Willy. If you're into vaginas, don't worry. They can also clone one of those too. It's called Clone a Pussy, but it is not, like, you can't use it. It really is a novelty.
Oh, what's the point?
But I guess the point is if you want to display your favorite vulva, you can. What's funny is the vulva clone is more expensive than the willy, but the willy is functional.
System's broken.
I came across a vibrator that I really like and would like to one day own. It looked like an eggplant, and it was so cute. Like, it had an eggplant shape, and then it had, like, greenery on the top, and then it had that nice teardrop shape, that elongated teardrop shape that eggplants have. The most expensive sex toy I came across was the Lilo Earl. It was available in silver and 18 karat gold, and it cost $2,590. And I'm not really sure what it did, but I know it was for men.
Can't disregard the antimicrobial properties of silver and gold. Well, I guess we're gonna wrap this one up, and so should you. Huh?
Condoms are very important, yes. We want you all to be safe.
Yeah. What are our PSAs? Watch out for phthalates. Wrap it up. When in doubt, don't put your dick in that. And that about it.
You know, I guess metal and glass are the safest dildos. You don't have to worry about phthalates with those. Hopefully your glass dildo is solid. Don't put a hollow glass thing up there.
They're non-absorbent. Don't put a jar in there.
And maybe think about getting tested for various STIs. Probably important to do at least once in your life. And there are ones out there that you can have and not know about. They're asymptomatic, which is very upsetting to my brain. But you could just be walking around being a host. You never know. Get checked out. Talk to your doctor. Set that appointment. Maybe get a pap smear while you're there. Or your chestnut looked at. I don't know. What do boys have? Prostates. Get your prostate checked.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Thingamajigs and another exciting history of a mundane thing. Don't forget to grab a goose. And if you've got a wing wang, don't put that in there. And if you've got a yum yum, don't put that in there.
So we're just not allowed to put anything anywhere. No one's allowed to put anything in anything, and the world is sad.
Thanks for listening.